Hello and welcome to another episode of Next Man Up, and we are back, the second episode of season 4, and we're back with a bang. Not only are we in the middle of free agency, the free agency frenzy which is going on right now, but we are also joined second time around on the podcast, Devan Kaney. Devan, how are you?
I'm doing well, just waiting for more and more free agency news as it comes out, kind of recovering from the Super Bowl, but I don't think I'll ever be fully recovered from that heartbreaking loss. But still a really exciting season. I guess I'm just still adjusting to NFL offseason life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a running trend we have when we speak to reporters, speaking to the Eagles organization, over the last few weeks. Spadero, their marketing director, you mentioned on the podcast last week, and every time we speak to everyone, it's like, I'm not sure I'm ever going to get over it, but we're trying. We're trying to move forward, and I guess the draft coming up in the free agency poses that distraction.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if free agency is really helping right now. So far, there have been a few good moves, but otherwise it's like, all right, give us something to get excited over again, Howie, please.
Absolutely. Mick, welcome to the podcast. About 5 times I've seen a message from you today saying, has Howie signed CJ yet?
Yeah.
Waiting on it.
It feels like they're breaking up the band. It's awful after the season we just had, and it's you just want to keep everyone together. Obviously, for cap reasons, money reasons, can't do that. But it's not nice to see, especially when other teams around the league are all signing these big deals and these stealing all our players. It's you just want to see it for the Eagles, but I'm sure we'll get there. It's early doors. It's only March at the moment, so I'm sure we're going to get all of this.
I feel a bit like when I was younger, and my mum, working class, brought me up herself, and I was looking at all the kids who had their new PlayStations, and I was getting the first gen Sega Mega Drive still for the first time at the moment with this free agency. Phil, how are you doing? Did you have a Sega Mega Drive? Was that your first one, or did you have a different console first when you were young?
No, my situation is probably a bit similar to yours. I think I didn't get my first PlayStation until the PlayStation 2 was nearly out my ear.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know anything that you're talking about. It sounds like a video game system, but like
it is.
The names you're using, like I recognize PlayStation, but otherwise I'm lost here.
Sega Mega Drive. We might be showing our age here, Devan, on that one.
Yeah, no idea what that
is. back in the mid to late 90s, I reckon that was out. Anyway, moving on from console systems, let's just get straight into it, guys. I want to maximize the time we have with Devan here. Free agency. We're not going to talk about the big free agent. First off, that is coming back. There's 2 of them specifically. But hot off the press, it's only been announced in the last 30 minutes. Eagles have signed, drum roll please, Rashaad Penny. Now, Rashaad Penny from the Seahawks, former first-round pick out of San Diego State, number 27. So lots of pedigree coming out of college. Lots of talent, I think it's fair to say, Devan. He's nearly 6 yards per carry as a running back in the NFL. Showed lots of promise. Had lots of injuries. What do you think of this? Like, it's all of us. What's your initial gut feel reaction about this signing of Rashaad Penny?
I don't know if I'm shocked by it or overly excited by it. I think we all expected that Miles Sanders wouldn't come back. So in my opinion, this is just them assuming that as well and knowing that he's going to go elsewhere. I don't know how much Miles Sanders was asking for. I would assume it's more than what they're giving Rashaad Penny. He's a talented running back. Was drafted in the first round for a reason, but also has only played in 42 NFL games. He can't stay healthy. And we know the Eagles luck with healthy running backs. So I guess I'm a little bit nervous, but hopefully they can keep him healthy. He's a talented guy, so should be a good addition to the offense. And it also means that now the Eagles, I know there was a lot of talk about what if Howie goes ahead and drafts a running back in the first round with that 10th overall pick. He's not going to do that, especially with this move, which I'm okay with. I'm very much okay with.
I am as well, and I'm glad you said that. Let's bring in someone who isn't okay with that, Phil.
Well, it's just one of those meh. It's like it doesn't move the needle at all, and it doesn't really indicate either way what the Eagles are definitely planning to do. So it's sort of, you might say it's a fence kind of move. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's not really going to excite people, but it's also not going to indicate. I mean, Howie likes to keep things pretty close to his chest. We all know, and I'm sure he's planning something big. But this is almost just like maybe it's just to throw us off the scent. Maybe maybe he'll get cut, and he'll just be like, made you look.
I mean, we don't know what I don't know if you know, Devon, but we don't know what he's been paid yet. I don't think. Rashaad Penny. So be interesting to see what type of deal he is on. And it'll be interesting to get Coach Singleton back on the podcast in a few weeks, once this all died down, to see what his takes are on it as well. Looking at some tweets ESP's put out there in the last kind of 20 minutes, and he's saying, Rashaad Penny, the stuff that you've been talking about, Devon, he had a breakout year in 2021, brilliant, 8 touchdowns over the last 2 years. Broke his fibula last year. It's not a small injury to come back from.
Ooh.
It's not a Miles Sanders replacement, and it may be the case that the Eagles don't want a Miles Sanders replacement this year, and they want running back by committee. But I'm not sure, given what we've seen so far from Rashaad, it's a Miles Sanders replacement. Would you be happy if the Eagles went into 2023-24 season with Rashaad Penny, Kenneth Gainwell, who had a good playoff run, Giant Killer, if they bring him back as well? Would you be happy with those three?
Yes, I would. So again, because Rashaad Penny hasn't played in too many NFL games, I need to look into like his style of play. I would have been happy with Penny could be this type of like bruiser running back. Like when the Eagles had Jordan Howard, and I'm by no means saying that the Eagles should bring back Jordan Howard, but that style of a player, I think, would complement what Gainwell and Boston Scott, the Giant Killer, can bring. Especially, you look at Boston Scott, you can also use him in special team situations. He's small and he's quick, but you also need that power back who can just plow through people, which Miles Sanders was not. So I think that with a style running back like that, which hopefully Penny can bring an element of that would be extra. And like LeGarrette Blount on the Super Bowl winning team, someone like that, I think would up my confidence. And I also think bringing in a super reliable, talented running back would take a lot of pressure off of Jalen Hurts. I'm not taking anything away from Boston Scott or Kenneth Gainwell. They're not on the same level as a Miles Sanders, despite people arguing that Kenny Gainwell is, given his performance at the end of last season. I think he came in when the Eagles were up by a lot of points and in plays when maybe Miles Sanders' injury was hurting him and
protecting him as well.
I think he's a starting running back type player, and I don't think the Eagles think that either. I know fans liked what he did, and I liked what he did and was able to do last season, but I also don't think you can just rely on Kenny Gainwell to be the guy.
No, I completely agree. It's funny. There's a particular fan, a member of the British and Irish Eagles, who'll be happy with you mentioning Jordan Howard.
I love Jordan Howard.
Yeah, well, there's a guy, a friend of ours, who's actually just written an article for the first time today, which will be released in the next week, called Ali. Maybe we'll have to introduce you to him because he's a massive Jordan Howard fan as well. I know he'll be loving listening to this little podcast. Mick, interestingly, 3 times MWC Special Teams Player of the Year in 2015, 2016, and 2017, noting your devastating gripes of the special teams performance over the last. Michael Clay, I think you've got a picture of him with a dartboard in your room somewhere. Is that right?
Yes, it's covered in perforations.
Do you have an extra? Can I have one? He got a raise and an extension, so I think I'm definitely going to need it next season as well.
No, don't get me started on that. I'll take the rest of the podcast if I have a go at Michael Clay again.
That's true.
So I'm going to put it behind me, Liam. I need to put it behind me because if I don't, it'll just overcome me. It'll become a whole personality. But the Rashaad Penny thing, I'm with Phil. It's not a sexy move, and he's not a Miles Sanders replacement. Actually, interestingly enough, Miles Sanders has tweeted out, to the city of Philadelphia, thank you from the bottom of my heart. So I think he knows himself, or maybe a deal is even imminent, that he'll be moving on from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think Rashaad Penny is the replacement. He was a backup at Seattle and can't stay healthy on the field. So I've been nervous if we're just going by this 3 back committee of Penny, Gainwell, and Boston Scott, even Trey Sermon, if we're going to
right, they
have a
do
look
still
at
have
him.
Sermon,
Yeah. Well, it's penny for thought over the next few weeks, isn't it? Sorry,
that was good. Gotta give it credit.
We had a few of those going around in a WhatsApp.
I need to get some boo sound effects put into this.
I think that might have been yours, Phil. Did I just steal that from you?
Crickets or something.
Some rustling like leaves rolling in the background. Yeah. Cool. All right.
A nice tumbleweed to go across the screen as well.
Yeah, that's it. All right. I think we'll probably get to cover Rashaad Penny maybe a little bit more later when Devan's off the podcast. But I think for now, it's fair to say relatively underwhelmed. Mick, Phil, but not too annoyed by the pick. Be interesting to see what the Eagles do in the draft, whether they still go and get a running back in the draft, because it's a potential that they could still do that, even with well, they don't have a fourth. If they pick up a fourth somehow, or even a 7th round pick, I don't see them, if they don't pick up any more picks, I don't see them taking running back at 10, 30, 62, or is it 94? Can't remember.
I don't remember the last one. They don't have that many draft
94,
picks.
It is. Yeah.
They don't have that many draft picks this year, but it's also a head scratcher. And I keep trying to tell myself to be patient, that Howie hasn't really done. I think re-signing BG and, of course, re-signing Jason Kelce, the fact that he's coming back, that's great news. And that's really exciting. And we should be happy about it. But, Mick, you mentioned the term sexy. Like, there has not been a sexy signing yet. I want to see CJ back. And if not him, maybe Bradberry. Maybe if Slay's traded, keep Bradberry and CJ Gardner-Johnson. Do something. We have yet to see anything like that. And you just have to trust that Howie has something in the works. And maybe it involves the draft. Like, he had a pretty quiet offseason last year up until the draft, and all of a sudden, boom, trades for A.J. Brown. So I'm just praying that hopefully there's something, because right now we're just losing guys left and right and have not acquired anyone new that I'm like, oh, wow, I'm really excited about that guy.
Absolutely. And the city of Philadelphia and the fan base are not conducive to waiting and being patient and hanging around, right?
Yes, we are not.
So they want that John to come in. Good stuff. I personally I have full faith in Howie to pull this off. I think that he will. If you look at some of the moves he made last year, they were trade moves that we made for in the main as opposed to in the free agency. It's worrying to see the amount of defensive pieces which are falling by the wayside, and it's been talked about a little bit. I think a lot's to do with the Eagles focusing quite heavily on offense next year and the year after, especially with when they have to sign Jalen to his big term contract. But yeah, penny for thought, as we said. So you just touched on them, Devan. Let's get to it. Quickly on Brandon Graham, and then a little bit on Jason Kelce. Graham's just come back from that season-ending injury last season. 13 sacks, tied 8th in the NFL last year. 4 assists, 2 forced fumbles, 15 solo tackles, 48 total pressures. He's a leader on the defense. With Hassan Reddick going in D-tackle position, and with Barnett up in the air, not knowing what we're doing, and having kind of Sweat and Reddick on the edge, how important is it that we got Graham back? Given the year he's had, productivity he's had, and the money side of things was a relatively decent deal for us.
Given the year he's had, given, whether his position is as important as others that they could have re-signed or not, Brandon Graham is so valuable. And the same goes for Jason Kelce. They're the heartbeats of this team. And no matter what, I think, and I love Coach Sirianni, I'm not taking anything away from him, but he is still, in his 3rd year. A guy like Brandon Graham has been around this team forever. He loves the city of Philadelphia. As we saw, he's willing to come back for a discount just so he can stay here and play for the team and city that he loves. And I think especially with the fact that they already have a lot of young defensive players, and they're probably going to get more defensive players, hopefully in the draft and even in free agency, you need that leadership on a young defense. And Brandon Graham is going to give them that. He is the heartbeat of the team is just the perfect way to describe him. And it makes my heart so happy that he's back. Same with Jason Kelce.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Mick got the quote here that you put into our research. It wasn't about the money. I love Philly. I don't want to miss a championship with Jalen. Jalen is the man. I just got to make my agent. Just got to make my agent to make it happen. I just think says a lot about Brandon Graham. Says a lot about the organization and the time he spent there, and says a lot about Jalen Hurts. You know, if Jason Kelce's the heartbeat of the offense and Brandon Graham's the heartbeat of the defense, I don't know. Maybe Jalen Hurts is the pacemaker, keeping it along a quiet, regular pace.
Yeah.
Awesome. Just touch on that, Mick. You're happy for more than one reason that Jason Kelce's back. You only just managed to fit back into your medium-sized Jason Kelce jersey that we found out in the pod last week. So another year to wear that, or many more anyway, I suppose.
And my Brandon Graham one. So the two jerseys that I usually have in rotation is my BG 55 and my 62 Kelce. So getting another year out of those two guys is fantastic to see. The vintage BG laugh and smile always puts a smile on my face when watching, Eagles footage on OTAs practice and the mic'd up segments that they put online. Everything. I'll consume as much BG content as I can until this man retires. And the same goes for Jason Kelce. He's got his own podcast. His own podcast is fantastic.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
It's so good. In fact, it's too good because he's taking listeners away from us, and that just can't happen.
I don't know how many listeners he's taken away from us, but some of our listeners definitely listened to it as well. Yeah.
But no, it's great to have him back in the building. Obviously, Jason Kelce, and I love the video that they put up on social media as well with Jason and Howie doing shots. That was
yeah, and Howie
classic.
gives him like the most passionate hug. It was like so excited and spastic. I will say, so I co-hosted the Maxwell Football Awards last Thursday, which is where we all found out later, Brandon Graham and Nick Sirianni celebrated in a similar way as Howie and Jason with tequila is now the drink of choice for the Eagles with shots of tequila. But Brandon Graham was awarded the humanitarian award, and just seeing these guys interact, and Jalen Hurts was there. He was honored as well. They're all the same exact people that you see, on the field. Brandon Graham is just so smiley. And looking back, it's like, I know why he was smiling and all buddy with Nick Sirianni that night. Like they knew it was going down. So it makes my heart very happy that Brandon Graham and Jason Kelce are coming back.
Although what I will say, Devin, is I would rather have a shot with you than Howie Roseman, because did you see his poor effort at downing that shot? I mean, it looked like he was trying to down a pint. He did it that slow.
Well, he poured monster shots too, so you can't really blame him.
So I'm not
man
sure.
That's not used to doing shots.
Yeah, but this is my point. I'm not sure. He's first on my list to go doing shots with. There you go. What does this mean for the Jurgenator, Devin? Cam Jurgens. Do you think that he's going to play right guard this year?
I do. I think it means that they'll just keep him at right guard, and then he'll take over he'll keep learning from Jason Kelce. Likely Jason's actual last season. I feel like we say that every season now. And he'll just be even more ready to go when it's his time, to step up. So like we all saw the video or audio of Jason Kelce when Cam Jurgens was selected. He was so excited. He knew why he was selected. I think they know what's going on. I trust Jeff Stoutland probably more than any other coach on the Eagles staff. Same. He is someone who I never want them to let go. So I think he knows what he's doing by doing that, and it'll be Cam Jurgens' time to be under center soon enough.
Have you done any research at all or talked so far about potential offensive tackles or linemen in the draft so far, or are you just focusing on free agency first before you get to those sort of things?
I've talked and thought about positions that the Eagles will likely target, but in terms of specific players, not so much. I have heard that there is a potential the Eagles go with an offensive lineman with one of their first round picks. Yeah. Probably not 10th, but you never know. I personally now hope, depending on what they do, with CJ, with Bradberry, even with Slay, who is now, they allowed him to seek a trade if he was able to get more money than what the Eagles were able to give him. Yeah. Then defense has to be priority. Unless they sign, some superstar free agents, whether it's guys who were on the team last year or not, I think that they should definitely just lean defensively, especially in the early rounds.
Yeah, it's interesting. So later on in the podcast, we're doing our Eagle Eye of the Draft kind of version. So we did cornerbacks last week, and we're going to do offensive tackles this league. So when we send it to you later, you can have a little listen of some of the prospects I think they could take with pick 10 or 30.
Yes, no, please do. The thing that kind of stinks for, I think offensive linemen are just used to it though. Like they're not a very sexy pick. Like no one's excited when the Eagles or any team takes an offensive lineman, especially when it's early on in the draft. But then you look at guys like Jason Kelce and you know that they can turn out to be superstars.
Oh, 100%. And we're huge fans of Jeff Stoutland here as well, on our side of the ball. Just wanted to quickly touch on some of the players we've let go. Javon Hargrave.
Yeah, that one hurt.
Huge, right? Mick, that was your number one.
And I hate that he went to the 49ers. Like, of all teams, you had to go to the 49ers.
Yeah. And their defense is stacked.
I know. Their defense is already so good.
I know. Mick, you were gutted by this move as well. I actually had CJ Gardner-Johnson as my number one bring back just for character fit, as well as skill sets. But Mick, and I think I was in the minority in the Eagles group over here, so maybe you're in the minority with me, Devon. Yeah, a lot of people wanted Hargrave back. Mick, I'm not wrong in saying that, am I?
No, it was more for positional value over, character, judge of character, or, safeties. Whilst CJ is a great player and he's very versatile in the backfield, and he's a young guy and he's got everything going for him, let's face it. And we traded for him just not that long ago, so it would make sense that we would try and keep him on the books. I would love to keep him on the books. Obviously, I'm dying to sign him. I'm waiting, refreshing Twitter every 5 minutes, trying to see if Rap Sheet has tweeted about CJGJ signing.
Only 5.
But only 5. I've got kids, remember. But Hargrave, absolutely gutted to see him go. I think it's because of a few factors as well. I mean, this guy had 11 sacks from the interior. That is scary. That is very impressive stats for an interior defensive lineman. And not only that, he was in constant rotation with Fletcher Cox. We had Jordan Davis coming in. We had Marlon Chiappiotto coming in. We had Sue coming in. We had Milton Williams coming in. We had Linval Joseph coming in. Most of those people I just named are not coming back, and that is devastating.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think no matter what, when it came to the debate over who you'd rather have back most, it's going to hurt. It was going to sting. And I know a few people who wanted Javon Hargrave because he's super talented. I agree with Liam and that I think CJ Gardner-Johnson is young. He's right. Like even you look at Darius Slay. I know Darius Slay isn't a free agent, but he's
5 years younger than Hargrave as well. 5 years younger than Hargrave.
And I think he's versatile. He went from cornerback to safety. He can go back and forth. He was tied for leading the league in interceptions. And I love his persona. I think CJGJ fits the Philly persona perfectly. But I will say I was listening to my station, WIP, earlier today, and ESP was on. And he made a good point where he was like, CJGJ is the fan favorite, but we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. He might not be the favorite of the team, the locker room. He might not be a favorite of the front office, even though there are reports that they're pushing to get him back. It might not be an overall, 100% consensus the way it is here. Because I would say CJ Gardner-Johnson is probably the fan favorite, at least in Philadelphia. Everyone's kind of hoping for him to come back. Every
year or season we've been on, we have crudely name one person Shagger, and it was Alex Singleton was called Shagger when he was here, and
I think I remember this when
you would have done
year.
Yeah. You had the same weirded look then as well. No, I'm joking. No, we had CJ Gardner-Johnson was it this year, and in my haste of jumping into free agency, I forgot to congratulate you, Devon, on your new role at 94 WIP. Tell us about it. How's it been? I mean, we knew you were up and coming superstar when we spoke to you last year, and hey, fruits of the labor are paying off, right?
Well, first of all, thank you. So I started at WIP as just like a part-time host back in the summer, and Angelo Cataldi, the longtime morning show host on WIP Sports Radio in Philadelphia, retired. So The new show took over and I was asked to be a part of it. So I'm on with Joe DeCamara, John Ritchie. I don't know if you guys know any of these people, but they're Philadelphia. ESP is on sometimes. James Seltzer, who also co-hosts Go Birds with ESP. And Rhea Hughes. So we have a lot of fun. I'm sleep deprived all the time because I have to wake up very early. But
time?
It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
What time do you have to wake up?
Like 4 a.m. usually.
Yeah, that's
tough.
Yeah.
I always wonder what time the Good Morning Football people have to wake up to get on that show ready to present at 7. It must be early.
Very early. So I actually was a morning anchor in Chicago before I moved back to Philly. I'm from Philly, but I moved around a ton before. And it's harder when you're on TV. Radio is actually a little bit easier because not in content, but in getting ready for a morning show because you don't have to do hair and makeup. The morning show when you're on TV, like Good Morning Football, like they're doing it, especially for like Jane Eurodoll, the one woman on the show, like full hair and makeup. I would guess she wakes up at like 2:30 a.m.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I wonder what time you have to go to sleep for that, like 8 p.m. probably, something like that.
I would go to bed at like now for this morning show, I go to bed at I try to get in bed around 9, fall asleep around 9, 9:30, 10.
6.5 hours sleep.
Yeah, like you just have to settle for not getting 8 hours of sleep. When I did the morning show in Chicago, I would try to go to bed at like 7:30 because I'd have to wake up at like 2:30, 3 a.m.
I mean, Mick, you go to bed at 1 and wake up at 4 anyway, right, with the kids?
Yeah, these bags under my eyes. These are.
Sorry, say that again, Devin.
It's funny because parents actually, a lot of like new parents prefer the morning show because they're up at those times.
Yeah,
anyways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Phil will tell you all about that. He's got pretty much, what is it, wages?
He's 7 months. 7 months now, and he's finally into a routine. I tell you what, the 2 hours between 7 o'clock and 9:30 are the best part of the day for me now because it's the only time I get to actually just do something that's not feeding or cleaning or anything like that. It's been great, but yeah, I know you're effectively working nights, aren't you, Devon? Sort of like you're sort of going to bed so early so that you're fresh and your day sort of shifts to the left about 6 hours so that you can all the like your breakfast is at like 4, your dinner's at like 2:30 in the afternoon. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, lots of friends and family in Philadelphia. I was over a few times this year during the season, and Tony, my uncle out there, uncle-in-law to be, is that a thing? Uncle-in-law to be?
No, it's not a thing.
Tony Fletcher lives in Newtown, Bucks County, and
cool.
he listens to you and said to say congrats because he listens to you guys every morning over there in Philly. So,
well, tell him I said thank you for listening. I appreciate that.
Absolutely will. And he's very picky with who he listens to on the radio. So there you go. You must be doing a good job. Good stuff. Right. Really conscious of time, Devin, because I know you've got to leave in a second. So just going to fire some stuff at you real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. So Jalen Hurts contract. What is the number?
Oh. So I'm really bad at putting out a specific number with this. I'm going to say more than Joe Burrow, whatever Joe Burrow is going to get. More than
wow.
Oh, that's a take. I like that.
That is a take. I like that. See, Phil, that's not a fence take. That's a proper take.
I feel seen.
More than Joe Burrow. I like that take. That might have to go out as a little piece on the old Twitter account. That alone. More than Joe Burrow. That's going to be
Devin's face and then a massive quote beside it, and then we'll tag it in and retweet it to the hell.
Okay. All right, Devin. Your first 3 picks of the draft are 10, 30, and 62.
Mm-hmm.
Don't need to give us names. What position are you picking at 10, 30, and 62?
Cornerback, defensive tackle,
Nice.
offensive lineman.
Yeah. Nice.
I wasn't sure about that third one, but I'm going to stay with it. Not sexy picks. I guess cornerback can be sexy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm all for an unsexy draft by Howie Roseman.
I mean, I would say Sauce Gardner-Johnson's pretty sexy after what we saw last year.
Exactly. Like that type of player who can come in and make an immediate impact. I don't want a guy so I'm excited to see what Nakobe Dean can do this season. He obviously didn't get much action. But I don't think Howie or the team even wants someone who they're going to have to develop for a little bit before he can really start playing and making a difference on the team. Someone like Sauce Gardner is a perfect example. Like they need someone like that, especially with all the guys they're losing right now in free agency.
It's interesting. I put out Christian Gonzalez and Witherspoon are the two top prospects of the cornerback class. We talked about them last week and put some stuff out on Reddit to see some reaction. We did a little piece on why we think we should sign Christian Gonzalez, and bit of feedback that people didn't think he'd be ready straight away to be a starting cornerback. Now,
really,
yeah, I think if you're picking someone in the top 10, then the team is pretty confident they're going to be starting straight away. That was from a guy who went to a few games and watched them play live. Don't know how much we're reading into that, but
I mean, these are Reddit users, man. These are.
I'm not quoting like articles here or anything like that. I just mean there was a few fans who had watched him play, said they didn't think said he had huge potential, but maybe wasn't going to be 100% ready. Take that as you will, as you say, Mick. It is Reddit we're talking about here. We loved what we saw at the combine. We loved what we've seen on tape. So he's my pick for 10.
And he's got a great name. So
absolutely, Christian. Okay, so and then defensive tackle and offensive tackle. I think we'd be fairly happy with that all around. All right, your way too early season prediction wins and losses for 2023.
Well, okay, so it's hard to predict. And it's so heartbreaking that they didn't win the Super Bowl last season because their schedule was pretty easy. I'm not saying that's why they were so good. I don't like the naysayers who just like chalk it up as an excuse.
No, that's fair. I agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
Their schedule next season is going to be inevitably more difficult. Their opponents are better. They're going to be tougher. I'm going to go with 17 games. I'm really bad at math. 12 wins. 12 so that makes
12-5.
Yes, 12-5. Thank you. There's a reason I'm a journalist, guys. I don't do math very quickly in my head.
I studied journalism as well. That's the reason I write too. Don't worry. Good stuff. And then two more quick questions. If you could feel this question is asked all the time, but because it was asked twice by our listeners, I will ask it. If you could bring one person back to play for the Eagles this season with the current needs at the position, what Eagle would you bring back to play at what position?
Like any Eagle ever?
Any Eagle ever. Yeah.
Brian Dawkins?
Yeah. Brian Dawkins.
Brian Dawkins, definitely.
Even if we have CJ Gardner-Johnson there?
Well, because then you can just move CJ back to cornerback.
That's true. He could play nickel role, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, nice. And then finally, what position or person do you want the Eagles to sign or trade for, position or person, before the draft that you think is the biggest need for us to solve as we sit right now?
CJ Gardner-Johnson or otherwise just a big defensive player who has experience and has a proven, record of their talent and impact on a team. I know sometimes Howie likes to go for the bargain bin options and try to almost outsmart the market by scooping someone up who we haven't heard of. And he does it in the draft too. I mean, look at Jalen Reagor, and hopefully those days are past, but especially when it comes to defense, even I'd be okay with them. I know that they didn't get him, but like a Jalen Ramsey, like a big name type player, especially if Darius Slay is going to end up being traded, you're going to lose CJ, you're going to lose James Bradberry. You need a mature talent in the backfield on defense. So yes, someone who fits that mold.
That is amazing. And Devan, thank you for all of your time that you've given us. And
of course, thank you.
Phil, I'm sorry I didn't come to you much, but we'll come to you now, the second part of the draft. Just wanted to make sure we got all those questions in for Devan there. Devan, thank you so much. You're always welcome. If you want to come back on the podcast in the future, we'd love to have you back on. And I remember last year we asked you a question of who'd win between a fight between you and Colleen. Was Colleen on before or after Devan? I can't remember now.
Colleen emailed us after that, didn't she? And she said, "I can't believe Devan was shit talking me." And then...
Really? I tell Colleen I love her. She's like my idol. She's a Philly idol.
Jokes.
I absolutely will. No, she didn't really do that. But yeah, that's awesome. Devan, thanks so much for being a great sport. Good luck so much in your new role.
Whenever.
And go Phils, go Birds, go 76ers.
Yeah.
The
Flyers kind of a lot.
Flyers. Maybe didn't say Flyers. Yeah. Union. Can we say that? All right. Go with that.
Right,
thanks, Devan. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Evan.
Awesome. Should we take a 60-second break and then we'll go and look at the Eagle Eye of the draft? Maybe have a bit more discussion about Rashaad Penny and what that means for the Birds. And yeah, we'll be back in about 60 seconds. Speak to you soon. And we're back, and it is time to talk about some of the players who are out. We did touch on Javon Hargrave. I was called Hargrave, Gravedigger. We did touch on Javon Hargrave. Bloody hell, it took me a while to get over that name, didn't it? Javon Hargrave, a little bit when Devan was on the podcast a few seconds ago. But we just wanted to talk about that a little bit more, and also the other free agents that the Eagles had who have now left. And the list is growing, gentlemen. And it's a little scary to look at it. So let's just touch on Davon, whatever you want to call him, Gravedigger. $84 million. $84 million to San Francisco. 4-year deal at the age of 30. To the age of 30, and 40 million of that is guaranteed. Oh, imagine 40 million guaranteed at any kind of that's insane. Incredible year, of course, Phil. 11 sacks from defensive tackle is just mind-boggling. Lots of other stats I could read out here, but he was just an absolute force as a run blocker, but also as a pass rusher as well. How concerned are you that the Eagles are going to be going with Milton Williams and Jordan Davis as the two current premier defensive tackles if we don't bring Mr. Fletcher Cox back? Versus, are you trusting in how he's going to bring someone in? Is he going to be in free agency? Is he going to be trade? Is he going to be in the draft? Where's your mindset now with this? Now it's been 24 hours since we've had to digest Gravedigger leaving.
Well, it's been the topic of discussion with CJ, Gardner-Johnson, and Hargrave. Most fan polls saying you'd rather keep, and it's firmly overwhelmingly in Gardner-Johnson's favour. Despite I think a lot of the experts tended to side with Hargrave for obvious reasons. Those stats you just read out are a phenomenal reason why the defense was so successful. But he is just one of 4 double-digit sacks defensive players, and I think it has to be sort of brought back down to earth a little bit, if you know what I mean, in the sense that, you know, we signed him for half that for 3-year deal, and now we're selling it. Well, not selling him obviously, but we're trading him. He's being signed by a team for almost double that, and
we'll get a 3rd round pick back for that next year as well, Phil. Let's not forget as well. So it's not like, you say we're not selling it, but we do get a compensatory pick 3rd round next year, which is valuable.
I mean, we're going to get a hell of a lot of compensatory picks next year, one way or another, which is something to look forward to, because I think this season's very much going to be we stuck our head above the parapet to try and win a Super Bowl. It didn't quite work. We can't do that two seasons on the bounce, and I think someone like Hargrave was just going to demand that kind of money, and the Eagles just are not in a position to pay it. So I think rather than trying to get upset about the loss, it's more of a case of, well, what other options were there? That's the way it's got to be. We knew it was going to happen. I think we were all just living in a little bit of denial. If they'd managed to keep Hargrave, it would have been an absolute miracle, and we would be looking at a lot of other players right now that we'd be losing instead. So you'd be looking at Gardner-Johnson gone, Slay gone, Bradberry gone. And a lot of the ones are already gone, but we knew they weren't going to command much money. So we probably could have kept Edwards and Epps if we wanted to. But guys, I just have to take a moment just to sort of bask in the joyous moment of Andre Dillard is no longer an Eagle.
That's a very good point.
If you're feeling a little bit down about Hargrave, at least a small smidgen of joy comes from the fact that the Bonehead Cafe is now just down to one owner. And once we get rid of Barnett, we'll be absolutely we'll be free. But quickly circling back to the Hargrave thing,
Joe, just before you do circle back, looking at Mick's notes here, Andre Dillard, Tennessee Titans, 3-year, $29 million, stepped in as backup last year. He's shite. End of notes.
Yeah, it's also the Titans as well, who are going into a significant rebuild. So what does that say about Dillard? He's going there. I mean, fair play to him. he's got a 3-year contract for $29 million. And I think I'm glad that he's managed to go somewhere. And I do wish him all the best. You never know, he might turn in, he gets the opportunities. There's less pressure off in a rebuilding team. There's no sort of fan base on his back for being such a terrible first-round pick.
Pro Bowl next year. You heard it here first. Phil Mount-Stevens.
It could be. But I think ultimately, the state of the play at the moment is still too early to tell. You're saying about the like what it means. Like, are we going to be left with Milton Williams and Jordan Davis? Well, we won't.
He did improve last year. Milton Williams did improve last year.
Yeah, but we won't be left with those two, and I guarantee you those two won't be the only two starting caliber players, if you can call them
defensive
Williams
tackle.
at the moment. I mean, it's been noted before. Obviously, the free agency signings last year all came after the AJ Brown trade.
Not free agency signings. We traded for players after.
Yeah, but the accumulation of all these players to go into next season, the following season, came much later down the road. Free agency, it's all a little bit of
apart from Reddick, which was this week.
Yeah,
that was the one.
I did mention that. It's the first bit of like I said last week, the combine. Like, people get really overly worked up about combines because it's the first bit of NFL content that we truly can get our teeth into after the Super Bowl. And the next bit is obviously free agency frenzy. Everyone's looking for these big stellar signs. Why are my team not signing any? I remember last season we were all sat here going, the Eagles have done nothing. We've got Reddick, yeah, great. It lasted for about 3 days, then we were back down to why isn't Howie getting anybody? Yeah, and look how that turned out. Well, I think it's a general sort of sports fan thing. You feel like, why not me? Like, everyone's like, why is my team not doing what that team's doing? Despite being in totally different situations. And so there's plenty of off season left to go. And I'm just hoping that I think I'd like CJ to come back, because I think now we've got rid of Hargrave, and I also think Bradbury's going to be back, and I think Slay's going to be gone, personally.
I'm going to be absolutely fucking devastated if CJ Gardner-Johnson is not back in an Eagles jersey next year now.
It feels very much like it's trending that way.
I don't know. I like with Javon Hargrave going, Andre Dillard, meh, Marcus Epps. Let's not talk about Dillard. Let's talk about TJ Edwards. Let's talk about TJ Edwards and Kaiser White-Mick. Both starting linebackers for the Philadelphia Eagles, a position we know that they do not place a lot of value in, albeit they did spend a 3rd round pick on Nakobe Dean, who was projected to go into the 1st round and fell so far that I had to wake up the next morning to find out the news the Eagles had signed him, because I was convinced he was going to be gone by the time our pick came around last year. That was one of the most confusing mornings that morning to figure out we'd signed him after all the messages. What's your thoughts on letting TJ Edwards and Kaiser White out the door? Take them as a pair, go one, speak about the other, however you want to tackle it. What are your thoughts on letting them both go? I mean,
the TJ Edwards, it was quite funny, actually, because free agency started at, it was 4 p.m. Eastern, wasn't it? So no, sorry, it was 12 Eastern, so it was 4 p.m. our time.
With the daylight savings.
TJ Edwards had signed by the Bears by about 4:15. It was so quick. It was It was lightning quick. And I'm sitting thinking, how did they thrash out a deal in 15 minutes? I don't think that's
I mean, it's pretty well known. It's pretty well known that it's called
legal tampering. Illegal tampering going on, I think.
For sure.
In the background. But apparently he's a Bears fan. He's always been a Bears fan. He's always wanted to play
is that
for
right?
them.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So he's done tailgates and all that sort of thing, and with Bears, and he's right into it. So wish him all the best. But I mean, he did come onto a game last season. It will be sad to see him go, because he became that sort of 3-down linebacker that we've wanted for so long, playing that micro. He was like the signal caller of the defense, a position that we expect Dean to grow into after drafting him in the 3rd round only last year. We didn't see an awful lot of Dean. But TJ Edwards, we've seen a hell of a lot of TJ Edwards over this last season. Yes, he didn't have the greatest game in the Super Bowl. Might have got torched a couple of times off of Kelce, but who doesn't get torched off of Kelce in the NFL? Let's be fair to the guy. It wasn't an awful lot of money that he's taken, but we're going to miss that presence in the heart of the defense. This defense has been completely overhauled this offseason, and like you said, Kaiser White is another linebacker. And look, if I was given the choice to retain one of them, I would have kept Edwards. I wouldn't have kept White. White was, he was playing the sort of will role, with Edwards playing the Mike role. And we've just lost two key pieces, and that's sort of something that is overarching that's starting to bother me as well, is that a lot of people are saying this, and myself included, right? I'm lying to myself as well, that it's only March and things will get better towards September. And they will. Inevitably they will. But comparing it to last year isn't strictly the best way to do that, because we did not lose starters last year in free agency. We don't have the draft compensation picks this year to prove it. If you look back, we lost pretty much no one at the end of last season, and we have just lost how many starters on defense? Is that 3?
We've lost 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 so far. We've lost 4.
Yeah.
And we're going to lose more, 100%, because at least either Bradberry, Cox, both could go.
It depends if you're going to put like Sue and Joseph in that category, because we picked them up halfway through the season.
No, I mean, you can include them as rotational pieces, that's fine. It might not include them as starters.
As well. Yeah.
But we're losing starters. We're losing caliber players.
Yeah.
It is definitely a concern.
And with Nakobe Dean, obviously there's a lot of upside there, and there's a lot of hope, and we're looking forward to seeing how he's going to do, because he could potentially be an absolute stud star linebacker in the league. We haven't had one of those ever in my memory. Not while I've been an Eagles fan. Anyway, so, and that's really cool. But there's a reason he dropped down to 80th with the injury concerns, the physical concerns. It's not like Kaiser White was an absolute stud at linebacker all season. So it's not like he was kept out by two absolute stud linebackers. TJ had a very good season. Not like he was pushing them to break into the starting lineup. So there's a risk there that, Nakobe Dean isn't what he was in college, and he should have had those surgeries that he decided not to have done, and all those stuff that we talked about when we were drafting him last year. There's still a concern there for me. I'm not all in on Nakobe Dean being this absolute stud linebacker yet, because I haven't seen any evidence to prove it in an Eagles jersey so far. I want it to happen. I'm not all in on this. I don't see how using a draft pick on a linebacker 2 years in a row. And they've just let Kaiser White and TJ Edwards go. So unless Sean Bradley or Devion Taylor are coming back into the fold to be potential starters, which I shudder to believe or think, then we've got a hole to fill. And it's likely that hole will be filled by someone like Kaiser White later on in the season on a $3 million a year deal, $2.5 million a year deal, and hope there's upside.
That's it. I mean, some of the linebackers around the league are being paid. I mean, Alex Singleton got himself a nice contract with Denver.
18 million, was it? Something like that?
Duke Riley got a contract as well. I know, he's playing special team as well. And again, like losing some of these guys, we're losing depth on special teams as well. So it's another one to think about, even though you know how we feel about Michael Clay's unit, but we've also got to consider that possibility.
I can't get any worse, to be honest.
I don't believe that we drafted Nakobe Dean, taken out of the equation all those things you mentioned about the injury and refusing to get surgery and all that sort of stuff. I don't believe that Howie picks a guy up, even in the third round, if he doesn't have some sort of plan for the guy. The fact that he was dropping so far was because of it, and that I have a feeling that he knew he was going to take him and not play him as a starter for a year, because whether he wants 3 years or he just wants to give him extra time to heal, and how he felt it was a gamble worth taking for a future draft pick. I mean, he picked Jurgens at number 2, and it looks like he's not going to be starting for 2 years on the bounce in as prescribed, which is being a centre. Obviously, he may end up playing guard, but he's not going to be playing his originally drafted position. So I think in that terms of that situation, I'm not worried because I feel like I'm quietly confident. I think that Dean's going to be a sneaky sort of, oh my God, this was another one of Howie's master strokes, was to get him in the third round because he'd fallen. You can't pass up on a player with that potential. But the caveat on that was that you're not going to be able to play him for a year. And the Eagles were in a position where we had all this depth in those positions, or we had those other free agent signings to sort of take that load off and mean that he can afford to do that. And if Dean goes into the training camps and starts smashing out the park, people are going to be sort of another light bulb moment for Howie sort of thing, potentially.
100%. And I think just to give even more credence to that point, Phil, which I think is a very, very good point, he also would not let Kaiser White and TJ Edwards go out the door if he didn't think that what he'd seen in the last 12 months showed him that he can do what he
One
thought
of them would have been paid, yeah, you're right.
Right. So I think you're bang on the money with both of those points. And actually that's been quite cathartic for me, having started that segment talking about the linebackers and being worried about it, and then you've made me feel better, Phil.
That's what I'm here for, man. That's what I'm here for.
As you can see on the screen, breaking news: Boston Scott resigns with the Eagles for a 1 year, $2 million deal. Resigns. Oh God, I did this on a tweet the other day that I was sending out, and oh no, it was an article that I was proofing to from British Eagles, and I asked Katie to have a look at it just to give a second pair of proofing eyes. And I had written resigns rather than re-signs. And she was like, that's a huge, and it's just happened live on a podcast. So there you go. Boston Scott re-signs with the Eagles for a 1 year, $2 million deal. As we are talking right now at 9:08 GMT time in the UK on Tuesday evening. Initial thoughts? I'm not very surprised. Coach Singleton will be delighted because his daughter's favorite player is Boston Scott, and obviously Coach loves coaching him as well. So Giant Killer's back to score some more touchdowns against the Giants, Mick?
I'm all for it. See if we just sign him $2 million for those 2 games. That is probably $1 million per game is for Boston Scott. Okay, that's fine. That's 2 wins. I'll take it.
That's amazing. Phil, no surprises there, but I'm happy to see that. I like Boston Scott. I think he's part of the Eagles' identity now.
Well, combined with the Penny signing, I was starting to think, I was like, well, everyone kind of is naturally assuming that Miles Sanders is not coming back and it's going to be Gainwell, Scott, and Penny. But I was starting to think, okay, well, what if it's a different combination? I kind of thought, oh, maybe Boston Scott's not going to come back because he's usually a practice squad player at the start of the season. I feel like I might be wrong, but I feel like one of the least of the last 2 seasons, he's been sort of cut or then re-signed into the practice squad, then pretty much elevated immediately because he's a player we can afford to chuck off the
He's running back 3/4, depending on who else is in the building.
Yeah, and the way things fall out is that we always end up picking him up because very rarely will someone pick him.
And he's trustworthy as well. He's trustworthy as well. And he's trustworthy as well. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, he's reliable and trustworthy. And it was just interesting to think that if we are going to have a committee, that committee doesn't necessarily automatically not mean Sanders and Scott's included. But obviously, I'm now completely wrong on that because we re-signed him, which means that he's definitely going to be part of that.
Well, you weren't wrong, Phil, because you never made the take before, so you're all right. Don't worry about it. You're just musing what could have left your mouth but never did. So you're all.
I didn't get a chance to say it because you didn't come to me during the Devan Kaney.
No, I deserve that. I deserve that. I'll take that one on the chin. I deserve that one. Good stuff. So I'm really interested to see what the Eagles do a linebacker now, either in the draft or a trade or part of a trade. Part of a trade that double player trade. I don't know. Who knows? I'm interested to see what happens. That's the bottom line. Safety. Marcus Epps. Very topical. We were talking about CJ Gardner-Johnson, and him not coming back. Sorry, him potentially not coming back or not knowing if he's going to come back. Him and Darius Slay are playing Twitter games with everyone at the moment with comments and statements and the eye emoji responding to players saying, oh, we've got a spot here in whatever team. There's multiple teams that are doing that. So Marcus Epps leaving. fairly confident, Phil, that this means CJ Gardner-Johnson is staying, or are we going to see the similar thing at linebacker? TJ Edwards goes, Kaiser White goes, we reset the board at safety as well. Scary thought.
It seems more than likely that there'll be a later round draft pick used on a safety, but we've also got Blankenship as well, who had a more than stellar end to the season. I think that's probably has a massive factor to do it. Epps wasn't overly exciting. It was sort of, again, he was one of those players that didn't necessarily get in the headlines for the wrong reasons. Therefore, the team
He was steady.
He was steady, kept chugging along for what it was worth. But the stats in terms of tackles, half as many tackles about as Edwards, and a few missed. So about the same amount of missed tackles and about 17 stops, 1 forced fumble, no sacks. There's not really anything there to kind of go, wow, but we're going to really miss those 76 tackles next year.
The passer rating allowed is what is jumping out of me here, unless that's a misprint, Mick. Passer rating allowed of 141.2. Jesus.
Our pass defense in the middle of the park was pretty poor as general, so I'm not surprised. Sorry.
Good on the cornerbacks. Sorry, yeah, go on, Nick. You were just saying that was PFF's rating, was it?
Yes, all the stats that I've put down on the sheet are per PFF. The passer rating allowed of 141.2, which is quite damning when you think about it. Marcus Epps to the Raiders. When when the news first broke about Epps going to the Raiders and it was 2 years, 12 million, 8 guaranteed, I thought we could have paid that. That's not a lot of money to retain a guy who has performed to a decent level this season. I remember a few times where he just just flat out murdered someone on the field. Just speared them. Was putting on the WWE moves on people.
Putting extra emphasis on the murdered.
Murdered. There's been a murder. I won't clip that.
Did you ever hear that? I don't know if this is common knowledge, but there was a murder outside Burger King with a purple curly whirly. Did you ever hear that one?
Was that your Scottish accent?
It's pretty bad. Anyway, that might have been just
was
one of my mates
outside Burger King with a
purple curly
whirly.
I don't know what's more excruciating, watching Liam try and do that impression or getting through this free agency outgoing.
Oh, brilliant.
But just to quickly, I know you did mention about, does it mean that CJ is coming back? And I did mention before that I reckon he is. It feels very much like the stars are aligning that way. The Eagles wouldn't be making these kind of moves. Everything's sort of ticking that box. Yeah, this fits in with that. This fits in with that narrative. And I think if they do, that will be the big free agency frenzy Eagles move that will put the Eagles fans at rest until the draft. Kind of going, well, at least we've kept the one guy that all the fans are wanting, which I think is a good move. I think given he's going to cost a lot less than Hargrave, it's a no-brainer as well.
How much of this, Phil, do you think is due to the fact that Gannon's gone and we've got a new defensive coordinator in, Sean Desai? How much? I mean, we all know that Howie makes the decisions, makes the moves. But how much of an impact do we think Gannon going and these players leaving is part of maybe more of a change in defensive strategy than perhaps they were giving away? Because we all know the Eagles don't give anything away in any press conference, especially this time of year. You can pretty much guarantee anything that comes out of Howie or Sirianni's mouth between now and the start of the season is absolute bollocks. So like, how much is this a sign of the new DC coming in and having a say in some of these moves?
I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that it's linked to the defensive coordinator, though it will be a definite factor. I think it's purely a dead cap situation, and the cost of players to bring back is purely just down to that. I think certain players seem to have followed Gannon, which is surprising, or maybe they just think, well, I'm getting a contract and it's with someone I know, so at least I know where I stand, I know what we'll be doing, and they're happy to go there, and the Eagles couldn't pay me. So that's the way life goes as a footballer. I think you can maybe draw a side narrative and say that the new broom sweeps clean, as the saying goes, to say that when someone comes in, they want to make stuff their own, they want to clear out all the chuff that they don't want, and they want to make the team their own straight off the bat. So there is also that. Both can be true, but I think it's going to be like 90% the fact that the Eagles are just sort of limited by finances, and the convenience of having a new defensive coordinator means that it's not like you've got your old defensive coordinator and you're stripping out all his weapons. Everything's new, so there's not going to be.
I'm trying to create a narrative here. I'm stretching to create a narrative, and I think you did. I think you did very well at responding to me stretching to create a narrative there, Phil. I think like how he calls the shots, Sirianni will have a say in it, and Sean Desai to a lesser extent. He'd be the third person with a say on what they do on the defense, but of course he would be consulted, and he's only in the door, so a lot of these moves would have been thought about during the season. Knowing what was coming up, especially after they made the moves. Howie said himself recently on an interview, I think an interview at the Combine, that the Eagles usually sign lots of players during the season to prevent what happens when free agency comes around. A la Jordan Mailata, Dallas Goedert the season before. I think they happened in like September, October. So they were locked in, didn't need to worry about it. And they didn't do, and he admitted they didn't do that this year because they were trying to win a Super Bowl, and they were ruthlessly focused on winning a Super Bowl. And it is a shame that we didn't win the Super Bowl for lots of reasons, and we cannot get away from the fact that because we tried to win a Super Bowl, it's going to make this year a lot harder in whatever way we look at it. And our expectations, we need to wait and see what happens in free agency for the rest of it, and in the draft and post-draft trades, etc. I would say if you're an Eagles fan, there's a lot less of a chance you're going to make the Super Bowl this year than you are in 2024-25. That sounds like a Debbie Downer. I'm just reading between the lines on what Howie says and what we've seen so far in free agency, coupled with the $52 million in dead cap that we have this year. Maybe someone should look up some stats of the last time a team has won the Super Bowl with like a massive dead cap hit and how that affects. Be interesting to look at. I'm making up loads of narratives here. Sorry.
I think one narrative that you could draw is that it makes sense with a lot of these moves as well. Signing younger players, signing Graham and Kelce for 1-year deals, very much points to a 2024 push. Again, there's no point trying to make miracles happen. I think it's very rare that teams do back-to-back solid seasons. It's usually go hard, retool, go hard, retool. And I think with like Nakobe D and the draft and the picks, compensatory picks that we're going to get next year, I think very much this year is going to be a bit more of a let's do the best that we can. Let's try not, we're not going to take the foot off the gas, but let's be realistic. Probably looking at 9-8 personally. In terms of a way too early season prediction, I think it's just going to be very much everything's going to be engineered towards getting rid of this dead cap, getting rid of all the issues that we've got, and then pushing again like we did this year, signing some fantastic free agents. Well,
me and you, Phil, have done a good job of disheartening the entire listenership there. So kudos to both of us.
No, I'm just tailoring expectations to say like, you can't have it your own way every year, but I'm really excited about 2024. I'm looking at it going, we do this off season right. We don't have any delusions of grandeur here. We can be in a really good position come next off season.
I think the Eagles still win 11, 12 games this year purely on the state of the NFC itself. Although it is improving.
I'm thinking more locally with just the team and how I feel they are. But you are right, the division and the conference itself are not exactly in exceptional states. And we're talking about quarterbacks as well. We've definitely got the best quarterback in the conference.
Although there's been a lot of moves today. Darren Waller, tight end, has gone from the Raiders to the Giants for a 3rd-round pick.
Not worried.
Stephen Gilmore has just joined the Cowboys.
Not
quarterback
worried.
From the Colts. And there's a couple of other big signings which have just completely left my mind now. Oh, Daniel Jones has obviously agreed his contract, which is fabulous news for all Eagles fans involved.
Washington don't have a they've got Sam Howell coming in off a rookie.
And apparently they're going with Sam Howell. That is the word.
Yeah, there's no other moves there.
Should have done that midway through last season.
I'm not worried about Waller. I think he's not. Well, a good tight end does not make a poor team. you can argue about a wide receiver, or quarterback, or maybe even running back, but tight end.
A good quarterback and a good tight end is dangerous, but they don't have that combination with Jones and Waller.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with the Cowboys, you just never know. They all seem really frightening, and then they're just not. And I think Gilmore is past it. He's over the hill. So he might have a good couple of flashes, but he's more. If the Eagles signed him, I wouldn't be excited by it.
Yeah. Should we talk about some offensive linemen in the draft?
Yay!
We need some kind of cheer in there, Mick. Like in the.
So I'm saying I'll need to get the sound effects going for the next podcast. That's my focus for the next is to get that wah, 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 and maybe tumbleweed noise or claps or something. Let us know in the group chat what we need to add in, and I'll
if you are doing custom ones, then Mick, you've got to get the "You're a Wizard" Howie into it, I think, because we're going to need that one a few times.
Anyway, let's take command back of this podcast and let's talk about the offensive line. And I have a big feeling that the Eagles will take an offensive lineman, and I think that is going to be a tackle position that the Eagles are going to take. And I think they're going to take it with the first pick they have at the draft. I think they're going to take it at 10. That is my prediction so far. That may change as we see what moves the Eagles make in the free agency up until the draft. And it's slightly skewed now that Javon Hargrave is going out the door. I think defensive tackle is an absolute priority for the Eagles now. Do I think the Eagles are going to spend first-round picks on defensive tackles back-to-back? Perhaps not. But I definitely do think defensive tackle is going to be picked in the first 3 picks of the draft for the Eagles. And I think the other position is going to be offensive line, and I think the third position is going to be cornerback. So book it now. That's my early prediction for the 3 positional picks of the draft. Offensive line, offensive tackle, defensive tackle, cornerback. So not position groups, actual positions. That's what I'm looking at. We talked about the cornerbacks last week. There have been a number of visits arranged for top 30 visits now, of which lots of them have been offensive tackles, and of which we're going to speak about some of those tackles today. We're going to talk about 3 specific, I want to say O-line, because some of these guys have played at the guard position and the tackle position and have played at both. All of them have played both during their time in college football. So we're going to talk about 4 players. We're going to talk about Broderick Jones, offensive tackle out of Georgia. We're going to talk about Peter Skoronski, offensive tackle out of Northwestern. Paris Johnson Jr., playing out of Ohio. And Cody Malk, another offensive lineman, playing out of Ohio. Later on in the next man up season, we will relook at the offensive line position, I think, again before the draft, because I think there is enough in the class to do another 4 or 5 players at this position that the Eagles could look at. But we're looking at the premier players now and the ones that have been mocked to the Eagles the most. So, can't remember who I went to last. I think it was Phil. So I'll come to you, Mick. Is there any one of these offensive linemen, before we go into each of them, of Broderick Jones, Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson Jr., or Cody Malk, who is your preference to sign for the Eagles if they do, in fact, choose at 10 or 30? Because Cody Malk could go later than certainly then Peter Skoronski and Paris Johnson Jr.
The question I pose back to you is, do I have to pick one at 10? Because I don't want to pick one at 10.
You do not have to pick one at 10? Or are you picking one at 30 with that in mind, or are you going later?
No, I mean, I'm not an NFL draft scout, so yes, I am, of course I am. But before mock draft season started, season with SZN capitals, before this all started, I didn't see an offensive lineman really hitting the top 10 this year, not like sort of last year. And you can always see projections as well. Like sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. You look at Evan Neal, who was projected as the is the best offensive tackle in last year's draft, and sometimes was mocked to go 1 overall because of how sort of poor quality the draft was last year. End up going in the top 10 to the Giants and did not have a great year starting out. And that's from a premier program as well, the Alabama and the SEC. So again, everything is projection, which is a massive caveat, on everything I'm about to say. But I didn't see any of these guys really be needle movers for the Eagles at this present moment in time. If I'm picking at 10, I'm not trading back. I'm picking BPA, best player available to me at number 10. I'm picking someone who's going to make a difference from day one. A guy that's going to come in and he's going to start for the Eagles. And let's face it, we've got 2 bookends at the moment and we're going to have them for another couple of years. Lane isn't retiring anytime soon. I get that we will have to draft his replacement at some point. Mailata is still on his journey from left tackle and he's getting better and better every year. He was absolutely lights out in the playoffs. We're not going to look to replace him either. So if we're, like I said, if we're paying a guy a lot of money, and let's not forget, if you are picking a guy at number 10 overall, you are paying him a fucking fortune over the next couple of years. Even though it's a rookie deal, it's still a lot of money. It's in the millions. And for that price, I want someone that can make an impact immediately. With that said, from the options that I'm presented with, I do quite like Broderick Jones out of Georgia. I think he's got a lot going for him. It's no surprise to anyone listening or anyone that's keen on mock drafts, that likes looking up prospects, who's been watching the Combine, who's been looking at, PFF or The Athletic, and all these other different outlets, the Draft Network, to see, who's the best available prospect out there. And I think Broderick Jones has all the attributes that we would probably look at for a franchise tackle. Skoronski, I don't have the same feeling about. I think even in some of the draft big boards, he's noted down as a guard, that he could be kicked in to guard because of they have concerns over his arm length, his reach. He was a standout at Northwestern before mock draft season kicked in. Skoronski.
Well, let's not go too much. Let's not get too much into it now, Mick. Yeah. Let's not go too much into it now. So, question was, who are you going to pick? Broderick Jones is your guy from what you've been given, but what you're saying is you're probably not picking an offensive tackle at the moment. If you're at 10, you'll pick best player available, and you don't feel like any of those are going to be best player available at 10. Would that be fair?
Correct.
Yeah. Awesome. Phil, just send you a little WhatsApp there. You might want to mute your mic when you're moving around because I'm getting quite a bit of feedback. But don't mute it now because I'm coming right to you. Same question, Phil. I don't know how much work or analysis you've done or looked at on the offensive tackles so far. Broderick Jones, Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson Jr., or Cody Mock. Cody Mock is the ginger-locked goddess with no 2 front teeth out of Ohio, who had a good draft. Is projected to be drafted much later than the other guys. Paris Johnson Jr. has been the consensus number 1 offensive lineman off the board so far in all drafts, alongside Peter Skoronski as well. And Broderick Jones is your incredibly athletic, athleticism off the charts guy who had an insane combine, and with our offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland in mind, perhaps someone who could learn a lot from and be a lot better. Just with that in mind, is there any one of those 4 before we go into them that you fancy?
Yeah, I quite like Broderick Jones for obvious reasons that you've just mentioned, but going on my narrative that I reckon they're going to be heavily targeted in 2024. I feel like someone come in and play tackle and guard, given the situation with sort of Sayamalu and also the fact that we need to replace Lane Johnson at a certain point later down the line. I think definitely with Jurgen's situation, I don't think it's a God-given right that because Kelce's back, Sayamalu's going, Jurgens is going to be at the guard, we could bring someone in of his level, have him play guard if we need to, or Jurgens to have them fight out for a guard position, and then that would leave maybe a cornerback, I reckon, later on in round one, depending on who's still left around. Maybe looking at pick 3 even, and a defensive tackle towards the end of the first round. But Broderick Jones, I think, is the standout one. I mean, Skoronski's getting mock drafted ahead of him occasionally. It's sort of neck and neck between the two. I think personally, like Mick said, with the best player available, I'd be looking at Gonzalez or Witherspoon at pick 10, but I have a funny feeling that they'll probably be gone. But if they're there, then I think you'd probably be looking at Gonzalez. If Gonzalez is there, it's a no-brainer.
Hold the phone. Eagles might not be picking a cornerback at pick 10 because breaking news live to the podcast. And thank you for talking while me and Mick were clearly trying to figure out the news we just seen.
I wonder what that symbol was. I was like, spinning, moving.
James Bradberry, cornerback for the Eagles, has just signed a new deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. $38 million, 3 years, can rise to $44 million with bonuses. So you're looking at $13 million per year for Bradberry at cornerback. Seems to me like a good deal price-wise, money-wise. Doesn't feel like an overpay. And he's got some bonuses in there as well. And we lock up Bradberry for 29 for years 29, 30, 31, 32 around. I think he's nearly 30 now, which is pretty much the years we had Slay for over the last couple of years. Interesting, because what does that mean for Slay? Does that mean that we trade Slay post the June 1st cutoff, which would save us 17 or 18 million in cap space looking into 2023, 2024, and would allow us to then sign someone else? Or does it mean that the Eagles are locking up their secondary, having shit all over their linebackers so far today? Breaking news, Mick, how do you feel about that? And then we will get back to the offensive tackles as well, but we had to do that live.
Fuck yes, man.
Yes.
Get in my veins. Inject that straight into me, man. If I did not expect Bradberry to resign, I just didn't. And you know how much I've been going on about Gonzalez the whole off season, or since we started looking at the draft, and that's a statement signing from Howie. It will depend on what happens with Slay. I still think Slay will be restructured, and to keep those both guys locked down on outside corner, I mean, that's money. That's money.
Do you know what this does do? It reinforces the Sean Desai, Jonathan Gannon, Nick Sirianni, Harry Roseman methodology of bend, don't break, no explosive plays, especially if they sign CJ Gardner-Johnson. So not looking at the linebacker position so much, but focusing on the secondary. That is a big statement as to what they're going to be looking at this year. And does that make you feel a little bit better in general, Phil, about we're losing all these players on defense? We had assumed James Bradberry had been going. I mean, let me put it this way. If we kept Kaiser White and TJ Edwards but lost James Bradberry, or if we kept TJ Edwards but lost James Bradberry, what would you be happier with? Keeping James Bradberry or keeping TJ Edwards? James Bradberry.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say it's going to be Bradberry based on the needs that we have at the position. But see what happens, guys, when I make a take, it ends up getting blown straight out of the water.
It's so true. It's so true. That was absolutely perfect. Like you went to Gonzalez, and then I was reading this, and in my head I was laughing my head off because I'm like, we're just gonna have to do Phil here. Breaking news, they're not gonna sign him. But do you know what? How fun is it doing a podcast when live news is flying in and we get to talk about it?
It's I mean, we still don't know what's happening with Slay. And at the end of the day, I think I have a funny feeling, and I'm making another take, so it's definitely not going to happen. Is that Slay will be a post June the 1st. That's why he's been given the opportunity to seek a trade elsewhere, because if he seeks a trade, gets a trade in the interim, they pick up his contract, and we're out of that two-way. So I think they're basically saying that this is where we're going. We're going with Bradberry, Darius, and you can either come along for the ride, take a cheaper deal, or you can go and get paid elsewhere. We'll thank you for your service, but you do you, we got to do us. But that doesn't mean that we don't necessarily take
Slay's not free agents, by the way. We just need to remember Slay is not a free agent. It was him looking for how much he could be traded by. So this almost effectively guarantees the Eagles are not picking up a cornerback at pick 10 or pick 30, because they would lose so much in dead cap for Slay to be traded. We've seen the value that they would get for trading him is not going to be very high, a 5th, 6th round pick, perhaps, and the savings don't match it. So, and if they were going to do the trade, they would do it post June 1st. So unless they know they're going to trade him and they have a buyer to trade him to post June 1st, they are not going to be signing a cornerback at pick 10. So I just wanted to clarify the difference between all the free agency guys we're talking about who are in the market and Slay, who is not a free agent, but has been able to look for a trade while he negotiates.
Yeah, but what I'm essentially saying is that it's not impossible, and it's still there's a way to do out of it. And the words that are being used in terms of crack on and find a trade. All right, okay, fair enough, clarified that, but it could be a case of find a trade, but it won't be going through until after the 1st of June. So what I think what I'm ultimately trying to get around to is the fact that, like Mick said, with the best player available, if we have Slay, Bradberry, and on the cards that come the draft time, and Gonzalez is sat there at pick 10, you telling me you're not going to pick him up, or check? You don't have a plan B. You don't have a situation where you go, well, if he's there, this is what we'll do. We'll take him and we'll do this with Slay, blah 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 blah. Or
yeah, you could make the argument. I mean,
but he's not going to be there. What I'm saying is, I'm just talking about the fact that in that situation, you can't turn and go, well, we didn't plan for this, so we're not going to take Gonzalez. We're going to. There
are lots of connotations. There are lots of different ways this could go. You could make the argument, now that I think about it more, that by the fact that Nick's smiling, I hope there's something else hasn't happened that we don't know about, and it's just going to surprise us.
Seriously, I've been breaking news.
Exactly. It could be that the Eagles know Darius Slay is going to be traded post June 1st, and that they want to lock up James Bradberry as the cornerback 1, and that they're then going to focus on signing with the draft. So, to be honest with you, it doesn't guarantee anything. There's a lot of things this could mean.
I did see a post the other day, yesterday, from Roar of the Lions, good friends of ours, sort of talking about the possibility of maybe Slay comes back to the Lions now, minus Matt Patricia. Seems like it could be kind of a bit of a fairy tale, saying, thanks, but I'm going home, and that because of the amicable sort of nature of it, because of we'll let you go after first of June, so we save a bit of dead cap money. And we pick up this, but this is all very much dependent on us picking up a cornerback. And I don't see them looking to take a cornerback and hoping that this situation. This was more of a hypothetical, that if such a talent is there available, you cannot not take him.
What chances we see CJ Gardner-Johnson being signed before we end this podcast?
I was going to joke about that a second ago. It's just like, if we stay on long enough, Gardner-Johnson will be here as well.
The pod will never end.
I'm just seeing a message that's been someone who's obviously watching the podcast. Oh no, we can't be watching this live. This is not live. We will be doing a live from a screenshot, which is me saying he's enjoyed how he's moving a little bit too much there. Alrighty, well, this has thrown us sideways off piste here. So should we let's get into these offensive tackles, and if another free agency signing comes in, we'll just ditch the offensive tackles for this week and we'll do it next week, because otherwise we're gonna have like a 3-hour podcast here. Let's talk about Paris Johnson Jr. I touched on the podcast last week that Jeff Stoutland was the main coach for the offensive lineman at the Combine, and it was really interesting to watch how he dealt with the top prospects. He genuinely gave them more time and instruction before they did what they were doing. It was so obvious that he was trying to see what they could do versus some of the other ones. If you post this question to me, call me a liar, but it was fairly obvious to me watching it. Like the advice he was giving to specifically Broderick, specifically Cody Mock, and specifically Paris Johnson Jr., not so much Peter Skoronsky. And the praise he gave each of them afterwards as they were running away versus some of the other words he was using to describe some of the other. Now, that could be because they're better offensive linemen, but it seemed like there was a little bit of bias going on. And what better opportunity to scout an offensive lineman in the draft than your offensive line coach doing the combine and seeing what they would do in what he would probably ask them to do in training to see how good they are. So Paris Johnson Jr., 21 years old, 6'6", 310 pounds, 36 arms. He did not run the 40-yard dash. But I did watch it. I watched him do all of the other plays, and he looked faster than most of our linemen, apart from Broderick Johnson, who was an absolute machine at offensive line. 33.5 vertical jump. He doesn't really need a vertical jump, so I'm not really going to look at that too much. But his arms, 36 arms, are massive. That's some of the biggest arms ever in NFL history. I think there's 50 players in NFL history who've had 36 arms or more. I'm sad. I researched that the other day. And so he's a big wide span. He's 6'6". He's 21 years old. I like drafting players young. I do not like drafting old players. It completely dilutes the value you get from them. I think I mentioned that last week as well. He had an incredible combine, looked very strong, very fast. Stoutland was impressed, as I mentioned, and talked about how big he is. He's a little bit too frenetic with his feet at times, and he can get pushed off the ball a little bit too easy with a bull rush kind of move from a defensive tackle and defensive end. But he is the number one offensive lineman in the class this year, and the Eagles have also picked him for a top 30 visit this year, which is what they did with Jordan Davis and what they did with Devontae Smith. So it makes you think that he will almost certainly be high on the board of the Eagles. Mick, thoughts on Paris Johnson?
Yeah.
Do you know much about him? You watched him much?
I watched them play Notre Dame in the first game of the season where we lost in Columbus, Ohio. The box score wasn't a high scoring game, right enough. CJ Stroud, we did enough to put him off. And this isn't a Notre Dame podcast, so I'll move on from that. But Paris Johnson, I don't think overly stood out to me on that day. But I will note, I don't think we got many sacks on that day either. I know that he is one of the top prospects of the draft, coming from a college like Ohio State, comes with a certain pedigree of player. You know, he's one of the most sought after prospects in the country. I mean, these guys go through, they become like 4-star, 5-star athletes coming out of high school, and they're only not drafted, but courted towards the massive programs. That's why these programs are so big and why they're so successful for over a sustained period of time. It's not like the NFL. There's not much parity. It's more like Alabama just goes and takes all the best prospects that it wants. Ohio State goes and takes as many of the best prospects as it wants. And Paris Johnson is one of those. Georgia Bulldogs is also another one of those. This guy, like you said, has all the measurables to be successful in the NFL, and can translate his game pretty quickly to what we try to do. And obviously under the supervision of Coach Stoutland. I mean, the best position coach in the NFL. You would think.
I mean, this guy could be a star, Mick. Like,
A guy
has
with
size as well.
Yeah, a guy with the size and the raw talent could easily become a franchise player.
He could easily
that
be
sort
the new
of
Lane
council.
Johnson.
So
yeah,
it's I wouldn't be too disheartened. I've already stated I didn't really want to take an offensive tackle at number 10, but
but it's proven to work for the Eagles.
If it does happen, then or if we trade back and get some value, take a couple of draft picks, and then take Paris Johnson, I'll probably be ecstatic. I would take that every night and day. So, I mean, like we said, left tackles, right tackles, bookends, they're one of the highest paid positions in the NFL. And if you're going to find a guy that can do that job cheaply as well, then you take it. You take it with both hands.
Absolutely. I'm talking myself into Paris Johnson. The more I read about him, research him, look at him, I would love Paris Johnson Jr. at the Eagles in the draft. And given we've just signed cornerback, I am even more convinced we are going to go offensive lineman with the first pick of the draft. Let's talk about Cody March. Cody March is someone who the Eagles met with during the combine. I don't believe he is someone who the Eagles have arranged a top 30 pick with yet, but that's because he's due to go much later than the top 30. Certainly in the second round, this could be a pick that you're looking at the Eagles taking up at pick 60. If they choose not to go with an offensive lineman in the first two picks in the first round. He's 24 years old, so immediately I don't want to sign him. I have such age bias in the draft. He's 6'5". He's a good size, 300 pounds. He put on something like 80 pounds. He was a tight end, I think, before he moved to the offensive line position. And he put on something like 80 pounds and seemed to maintain his slim physique. He ran a 5.08, which is fast for a 40-yard dash for an offensive lineman. Vertical jump is tiny, but again, doesn't matter so much. His arms are 32, so that's how much smaller his arms are compared to Paris Johnson Jr., who we just talked about. A lot of people seem to, T-Rex arms, yeah. A lot of people, a lot of Eagles fans, a lot of pundits seem to like him though. Going to the Eagles, he's very, very versatile. He can play every position on the offensive line, which is something that Stoutland would like as well to work with. But if you're spending a first or second round pick on an offensive lineman, surely you want them to be a positional starter. You want them to be a right tackle, left tackle starter as opposed to a Cam Jurgens or, not even Cam Jurgens because he will be the center, but someone who's going to play across, like backfill across the rollout. I'm not 100% sold on him. However, he did have a 90.8 grade last year, and he is a fluid athlete. He can locate space easily, plays with a mean streak, which is what Philadelphia fan base will like. I think that's what a lot of people like about him. He's got that. Basically, when he stops a rush, he finishes. Like he wants to put them on their back, make them pay. One of the reasons he hasn't replaced his two front teeth since they got knocked out years ago. Maybe he'll be able to afford it if he gets a first or a second round draft pick. He needs work with his hands, which are one of the big downsides to him. He's got short arms, as we talked about. Something that Jeff Stoutland could help him with for sure. I think he's a solid choice for the Eagles. I'm not happy with his age. I would prefer they spent a day one, day two pick on someone who is going to be a long-term starter at that position. That's where I'm sitting on that. I don't know, Phil, did you get much of that for Cody March there?
Yeah, sorry guys, I managed to catch in for the Cody March bit. I had a Bodie interruption.
Oh, no worries.
I had to deal with an emergency. He's off to bed now.
Is he okay? So. Is he all good?
Yeah. No, he nearly made an appearance, but now we're doing this new format. I want to be professional.
Oh, you can absolutely bring Bodie. I'm disappointed you didn't bring Bodie in to the new format. He is more than welcome.
Oh, he's gone now. It's
go get him, wake him up.
Hang on. No, seriously. Yeah, age massive factor for me as well, Liam. I think that just, like, I'm still stuck in this narrative that I think the Eagles are always planning long term. They're going with youth. They're bringing any old players are being brought in for 1 year deals to sort of just tide over and legends of the legends of the team but there's no point bringing a 24-year-old that when he's going for his second contract he's approaching 30 if projecting ahead that far. But I think you've got to have a good reason or be desperate for an offensive tackle to be picking him because you've missed out on all the other ones available. I think.
And he could very easily be a guard rather than a tackle as well.
I mean, the cross translating of positions are going across the line is a very big plus, but I think his age will be the overriding factor. And I think you'd be looking at the players that we've spoken about already. They can all play guard. Some of them, or most of them, can play a guard position, or they can play different sides to an extent. Is there another breaking news, Liam?
It's not a.
Just looking at Liam.
It's not a new signing. Darius Slay 1 minute ago has just said it's going to be some elite quarterback tandem this year.
Well, it's a shame he's not going to be part of it then, I guess.
Well, I mean, is it because he knows the Eagles are going to go and try and get Christian Gonzalez?
No. I think we know what that means.
There's games going on.
Great. I mean, but that lends to the fact that he's obviously willing to compromise on the money side of things. That's the only way that he can be sticking around to be part of that.
Well, Bradberry took a discount. Bradberry,
he did, but we have many more needs, and obviously the CJ deal is, if that happens, is going to be another factor. I think it could be good, it could be really bad. We could be not getting CJ, and it could be a case of we've kept our secondary intact in sort of the cornerback position, but we're going to stick with Reed Blankenship and go in the draft for safety.
It's quite mad doing this all like this. We've never done anything like this before. We're 4 seasons in, and it's all a bit frantic. But I'm really quite enjoying the breaking news, throwing spanners left, right, and center as we do this.
But to tile that off, I think they're more likely to go with someone at maybe 10 just to get that position locked up. How we took Lane Johnson very early on. Was it pick number 3? And I think if you pick a player like that, he should hopefully be able to play this season. But I think generally you'd be looking long term, and I think he'd be a fool not to pick up a player. But I think if Gonzalez is there just to hug back, I think it's one of those things where pick 10 is such a tasty position to be in the draft because it's not that much of a stretch to move up or back and still get good quality players. So the options are very much wide open, which is so hard for me to pinpoint a take.
Absolutely. I'm looking at the time here, folks, and I'm looking at another 2 offensive linemen, and I'm thinking let's just push these 2 offensive linemen into another podcast. We'll do one with Broderick Jones, Peter Skronsky, and probably also Osiris Torrance, perhaps Darnell White, right tackle out of Tennessee, Wanya Morris, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma, and Matthew Bergenson, offensive tackle out of Syracuse. We'll have a look at some of the top 30 interviews and go into them in a bit more detail. We've had a bit of a sporadic podcast here with Devan Kaney coming on, talking about free agency, talking about the players who have left, touching on offensive tackles, and then also having some breaking news live in the chat, which has been lots and lots of fun. So, I think we'll wrap it up there, folks. And thank you very much for listening in, whether you're watching us on YouTube. If you aren't watching us on YouTube, go to YouTube at British Eagles on YouTube, where you can find all of our social media on our Twitter page at British Eagles. The Linktree bio is there. You can find our website on there. You can find our Twitter page on there, our YouTube channel on there. We've got a Facebook page on there. You can find information about our trip to Philadelphia in November, and you can also find information about our membership as well. Phil's laughing here. I hope I haven't missed a little breaking news there before we end the podcast.
No, not at all. I don't think I'm going to repeat it on the pod, but there's a message in the WhatsApp group. Just reading back on things.
I know the one. The one that said cut.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw that one as well. Good stuff. All right, we are the British and Irish Eagles. We are sponsored by Pashing Avenue. This is the Next Man Up podcast, and we got some exciting guests coming up in the next few weeks. We're going to continue to do Eagle Eye in the draft. There'll be many more free agency signings, hopefully, in the next couple of days, which we're going to talk about. And then we're going to do some games as we get closer to the draft, as well as have some of our guests. So please do listen in, whether it's on your podcast listening channel, whether it's on YouTube and you're looking at our I don't know why you'd want to look at our faces, but if you are, thank you for staying with us this long and you're still looking at us. I hope you like my new background. That is probably only going to last until Katie comes back from holiday in a few days, but for now it's here. Phil, thank you, sir. Mick, thank you as always. And we love you guys. Speak soon.